I never imagined that graduation day, cap perched on my head, diploma in hand, would be my moment of reckoning at AT24. I should have been focused on the future, basking in the celebration with my sister Lily beside me in matching gowns. But as I looked into my parents' faces, frozen and ghost white beneath the midday sun, I knew something they didn't. Revenge, I've learned, doesn't always come in fire. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it walks across a stage and smiles. Before I tell you what happened to leave my parents speechless on the biggest day of Lily's life, let me ask you this: have you ever had to fight twice as hard to get what someone else was handed? Then maybe, just maybe, you already understand me. I grew up in suburban Michigan, in a home that screamed perfection from the outside. 2 stories, a white picket fence, and a line of family photos above the fireplace. But those photos lied. Why? Parents, Robert and Diana Wilson, were respectable people. Dad was an accountant, measured, meticulous, and emotionally unavailable. Mom taught English at the local high school and lived her life by rules, spoken and unspoken. In that world of structure and appearances, Lily sparkled. She was 2 years younger than me, but already treated like royalty. Blonde curls that bounced perfectly in school photos, natural charm, and an uncanny knack for being exactly what my parents wanted. I was the older one. Quiet. Bookish. Brown-haired and practical. I learned early that I had to earn everything. And even then, it might not be enough. On Christmas mornings, Lily tore through expensive toys while I unwrapped discount craft kits and socks. But she needs encouragement, Emma, Mom would say. She has so much potential. I'd nod. Even at 8, I knew fairness wasn't a family value. There was one person who made me feel seen: Grandma Eleanor. Every summer, we'd go to her little lake house in northern Michigan. I'd sit on the dock, sketching trees, boats, clouds. She'd sit beside me with a book and hot tea, watching me draw like it was the most important thing in the world. You see things differently, Emma, she told me. Don't let anyone dull that. In her dusty old library, I read about women who built empires, broke barriers, and ignored everyone who told them no. I didn't want to be rescued. I wanted to rise. So I made a promise to myself: one day, I'd do something that couldn't be ignored. By high school, I was done waiting for attention. I joined every business and economics club I could. I stayed late with my math teachers. I started keeping spreadsheets for fun. When I won the regional business plan competition in 10th grade, my teacher Mr. Rivera was so impressed, he called my parents. Mom answered. That's nice, she said after hanging up. Lily has her history project tomorrow. Can you help her? I worked after school at a local coffee shop, saving money like my life depended on it, because it did. I held a 4.0 GPA, even while pulling 20 hours a week. Meanwhile, Lily joined the debate team and, predictably, became a star. Every weekend, our parents followed her to tournaments. They bought her suits, celebrated her wins with fancy dinners, and beamed when she walked into a room. For my art show, Mom dropped by for 10 minutes during lunch and didn't even look at my sketches. Art is just a hobby, Dad said. Focus on something useful. So I chose business. And I got very good at it. Senior year came, and despite being 2 years apart, Lily and I were in the same graduating class. She'd skipped a grade. Naturally, we both applied to Westfield University, her to the political science program, me to business. The day our acceptance letters came, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I tore open mine, eyes scanning the words. Again and again. I'd gotten in. Full acceptance. I ran into the house. I got into Westfield. Dad didn't look up from his phone. That's nice, Emma. 15 minutes later, Lily stormed in, waving her own envelope. I got in, she shrieked. Political science. Suddenly the house transformed. Dad jumped up. Mom cried. Champagne was opened. A full celebration. They completely forgot I'd said the same thing just minutes earlier. I sat at the table in silence, gripping my letter. 2 weeks later, over dinner, Dad made the announcement that broke me. We need to talk about college, he said. We've been saving for your education, Lily, since you were born. What about me? I asked quietly. There's just not enough, Mom said. You're so independent, Emma. You'll figure it out. Lily looked at me, guilt written across her face. She opened her mouth, then shut it. It didn't matter. I had my answer. They had planned to fund one daughter. And they chose her. I excused myself, went to my room. And let the tears come, briefly. Then I opened my laptop and made a list of scholarships, grants, freelance gigs, internships, resources. If they weren't going to invest in me, I would. College was war, and I was my own army. I juggled 2 part-time jobs, applied for over 20 scholarships, and launched a small business consulting side hustle online. My first client was a local bakery. Then a bookstore. Then 2 yoga studios and my classes. Straight as I'd show up to lectures after pulling all-nighters, then spend weekends updating spreadsheets and sending pitch decks to local entrepreneurs. I built my own network, attended free webinars, and emailed professors with ideas no one else dared bring up. Lily, meanwhile, was thriving socially. Her Instagram was a parade of parties, campaign rallies, and friend groups. She was a rising star in student government, and our parents? They visited her twice a semester, sent care packages, bragged about her on Facebook. Me? I got bills. By senior year, my company had scaled to 5 part-time clients and steady income. My capstone business project was submitted to a national competition by my professor, without me even knowing, and it won. I was offered a full-ride MBA at a top school. Then came the invitation, keynote speaker at the National Young Women in Business Conference. The same week as graduation, Westfield decided to combine all departments for a massive ceremony, and Lily and I would walk the stage together. I didn't tell my parents what was coming. I wanted them to feel it when it hit. The crowd was massive. Hundreds of students, families, faculty, friends. I stood backstage in my cap and gown, looking out at the sea of people. My name was already in the program, but my parents hadn't read it. They were too busy talking to Lily and taking selfies. I turned to my sister. Good luck. She hesitated, then said, Emma, I know what they did. I'm sorry. I nodded. I don't need an apology. I needed this moment. The dean stepped forward. And now, please welcome our class of 2025 valedictorian, Emma Wilson. Gasps. Applause. My mother's face twisted in confusion. My father looked as if someone had unplugged him. I stepped up to the microphone. People often ask what drives success, I began. For me, it was silence. The silence of being overlooked. Of being told that's nice when it should have been, we're proud of you. The silence of not matching. The audience was hushed. All eyes on me. I've learned that silence can fuel greatness. You don't need to be the golden child to shine. Sometimes, the ones in the shadows are the ones building empires. I paused and scanned the crowd, until I found them. My parents are here today. They believed in my sister. They funded her dreams. And that's okay. Because it taught me to believe in myself. There was a collective shift in the audience. A few clapped softly. I'm proud to say I've built a business from scratch, earned a full MBA scholarship, and will continue helping other women who were told to be realistic. And to anyone who's ever been told they're too quiet, too different, too ordinary, don't dim your light for anyone. I left the stage to a standing ovation, and my parents didn't clap to the reception. They finally came up to me. Emma, Dad said, clearly uncomfortable. That was impressive. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked. About the speech. The award. You never asked, I said calmly. Lily stepped in. She didn't owe you that. You owe her a lot more than applause. There was silence again, but this time, it didn't hurt. I'm proud of you, Dad said awkwardly. I gave a polite smile. Thanks. But I didn't need you to be. The truth is, they weren't evil. Just blind, but blindness isn't an excuse for neglect. I built my own foundation. I created my own story. And I walked that stage, not just for myself, but for every girl who's been told to sit still while someone else shines, and I've never felt lighter. A month later, I moved into a small but sunlit apartment in Chicago. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I painted the walls soft white and filled the shelves with plants, art, and the books Grandma Eleanor had given me. I launched my business full-time, formally registered it as Clarity Strategies, and hired my first intern, a sharp-eyed marketing major from my alma mater who reminded me a little of myself. The first time a client referred to me as a CEO, I smiled all day at night. I still heard echoes of Dad's voice, art is just a hobby, and be realistic. Now I realized that what he saw as limits were just his own fears, projected onto me. One morning, as I sipped my coffee and read emails, a small white envelope slid through my mail slot. It was from Grandma Eleanor's estate. Inside was a letter. Written in her flowing cursive, Emma, if you're reading this, it means you've reached the point I always knew you would. The world is wide, and I hope you've carved your own place in it. I know they didn't always see you. But I did. And I always will. Love, Grandma. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall. Quiet, not broken. Not anymore. I framed the letter and hung it in my office. A daily reminder of where I came from and how far I'd come. The thing about success is that it attracts attention, even from those who once ignored you. One day, I got a call from Mom. Hi, honey, she said cautiously. I saw your interview in the business journal. You looked confident. I almost laughed. Thanks. Your father and I are proud, she added, as if the words took effort to form. I'm glad, I said. But I've been proud of myself for a while now. Silence. Then a soft, almost defeated, I know. I didn't need them to grovel. I didn't need them to change. But I appreciated that they were, at the very least, trying. Later that year, they came to one of my workshops. Sat in the back, watching quietly, and when it ended, my dad stood up and clapped. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Lily and I stayed close. Closer than we'd ever been. One night over dinner in my apartment, she confessed something that caught me off guard. I almost didn't apply to Westfield, she said. I knew they'd only support one of us. And I knew they'd pick me. But you did it anyway. She nodded. Yeah, because I didn't want to be second best either. That's when I realized, being the favorite didn't mean she felt chosen. It just meant pressure wore a prettier face. We both had to fight, just in different ways. I'm proud of you, I told her. She smiled. I'm proud of you, too. Years passed. I started mentoring young women who reminded me of the girl I used to be, quiet, overlooked, underestimated. We hosted networking events, confidence workshops, and startup incubators. One day, during a panel Q&A, a high school girl asked, "What would you tell your younger self?" I paused, then said, "Your value doesn't shrink just because someone else fails to see it." That line ended up on t-shirts and notebooks in our next program. I thought of Grandma Eleanor. She would have worn that shirt with pride. I visited home less often, but when I did, things were different. My parents no longer treated me like the background character. They asked about my work. Listened, really listened. When I spoke, we weren't perfect, but we were trying, and when I offered to take them out for dinner one night, Dad hesitated before saying, "Let us pay. It's the least we can do." I let them, not because I needed it, but because it mattered to them. One morning, I caught my reflection in the mirror, still me. Same brown eyes. Same quiet strength, but no longer the girl trying to prove she belonged. I had become the woman who owned her place in the world, and that was all the revenge I ever needed. If you're reading this, maybe you've been the Emma in your family. Maybe you've worked twice as hard for half the praise. Maybe you've learned to clap for yourself in rooms that stayed quiet. If so, don't stop. The world doesn't always reward the quiet ones. But it needs them. Because they're the ones who build from the ground up. Who carry strength no one sees coming. Keep building. Keep shining, and one day, you'll walk across your own stage, not just seen, but unforgettable. A year after that speech, I received a handwritten letter from a girl named Tiana. It arrived folded inside a worn notebook page, in blocky but careful handwriting. Dear Emma, I saw your video online, the graduation speech. I don't know how I even found it, but I watched it 3 times and cried every time. My parents are just like yours were. My sister gets everything. I feel invisible most days, but hearing you made me feel seen. I want to study architecture. My dad says it's a waste of time. But you made me think maybe I can do it anyway. Thank you. Tiana, age 17. I read it twice, then a third time, then I cried. That letter reminded me that what we survive becomes someone else's survival guide. That our voices aren't just for telling our story, they're for helping others find theirs. I wrote back, and that began a new chapter one hadn't expected. Tiana became the first recipient of a new initiative I started. Project Eclipse is named after the idea that even when the light is hidden, it's still there, waiting to break through. We gave scholarships to overlooked young women. But we didn't stop there. We offered mentorship, job shadowing, resume building, confidence coaching, every tool I had to fight for myself, now gifted to girls like me. The applications poured in. Stories too familiar, too heartbreaking, too resilient to ignore. Girls from small towns and broken homes. Girls who were told to stay quiet, stay small. Girls who dreamed big anyway. I saw myself in every one of them, and every time I handed out a scholarship, every time a girl said, "Because of this, I believe in myself now," I felt another brick fall from the wall I'd once been forced to climb. Years passed, and Project Eclipse grew. We held an annual summit, where our scholarship recipients came to share their stories, their wins, and sometimes their wounds. 1 year, during our closing ceremony, we invited the girls on stage one by one to share their dreams. One wanted to be a surgeon. Another, a lawyer. A third, a sculptor. They stood there with microphones shaking in their hands and fire in their eyes. When it was over, the crowd gave a standing ovation. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because I no longer needed to mourn the girl I used to be. She was no longer buried beneath doubt and dismissal, she was leading the stage.